we're with David Orrego-Carmona. Is that well pronounced, David?
Yeah, that's well pronounced, David Orrego-Carmona.
Good. So David's the first name, and Orrego-Carmona is your double barrel family name, right?
Yes, I adopted the hyphen to prevent confusion.
Among all the people who don't know how Spanish names work. Where are you from, David?
Originally from Colombia, and then I did my studies in Spain, and currently I'm in the UK.
Okay. And what do you do in the UK?
Right now, and I'm assistant professor in translation and transcultural studies at the University of Warwick, and I'm a research associate at the University of the Free State in South Africa.
Okay. And you're the techie man, is that right?
Yeah, I work with audiovisual translation technologies, and I implement this in training. So specifically at Warwick, I was brought in as the translation technologies audiovisual translation person to implement these changes into their undergraduate and master's programs.
Okay. And that's in teaching and in research as well?
Teaching and research, yeah. The idea is to develop both of them at Warwick.
Okay. And you're working on subtitles or technologies in general?
I work with subtitles primarily, but I have been working more and more on machine translation as well. And now the intersection of both. So how machine translation is implemented in subtitling. So I take a broader view at those issues, primarily from a user's perspective. So I look at technology, subtitling, and translation from the user side.
Okay. David, let's go back to when you were 22, 23, 24. Where were you? What were you doing?
I was in Tarragona working with you doing my PhD. The PhD was on a reception study of non-professional subtitling using eye tracking. And through that, I also started creating a network in a way. I did a couple of research stages while I was there, and that helped me identify people with whom I could work. And yep, it started my career basically.
Yeah, I think you won the prize for the most conferences done by a doctoral student, which
Informally,
was
yes.
clever because the money was available. Go for it, use it. You built up your network. That was well done. What happened then?
So right after my PhD, I went to the University of Warsaw for a couple of months to write a postdoc proposal that wasn't successful at the time. Then from there, I went to South Africa as a postdoc. I stayed in South Africa for about a year, and that helped me.
Yeah.
Sorry?
That's with Cobus Murray, right?
With Cobus Malay, yeah. So through Cobus and other colleagues in the department, I became familiar with translation studies not only in South Africa but in Africa, because it was at the time when they were founding the Association for Translation Studies in Africa. And then from there, I came to the UK to work at Aston as a lecturer in translation. And through that, I learned a lot about the professional side of translation in the UK and globally, because the UK is quite a center in that sense. So I became very familiar in translator training for the profession and the language industries.
Okay, great. Just out of interest, Cobus is very heavily theoretical. This is in Bloemfontein, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your thesis was very heavily empirical. How did he theorize you, or what happened?
Well, I was supposed to stay there for 2 years, but I only ended up staying only for one. So I was really focusing on my project. But discussions with Cobus were very interesting because of that. It was trying to theorize about changes in the profession and in translation, and also it provided a really good counterexample to what I was doing at the time. So I remember the discussions very fondly. We're still in contact, and it's a very different way of looking at translation, but I found it very, very informative.
Yeah, great. I must, it's an embarrassing question, but was it easy for you to find a job when you came out with a PhD, which was a brilliant PhD, by the way? But what happened there?
It wasn't easy. So I applied for many positions in the UK primarily because of the way how the system is organized. It was easier for me, or assumed it would be easier for me to find a position here. I defended my PhD in April 2015, and I was hoping that by August 2015 I would have a job. That didn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
So yes, so competition is very tough, and once you're, or now that I'm on this side, I can see how demanding the market is. So it wasn't easy. It was out of work, many unsuccessful grant applications, including one in which the reviewers mentioned that not having a job was actually a minus point in my application. It's like, well, that's why I'm looking for a job.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's quite an experience, but through that, I got the opportunity to go to South Africa, and that year in South Africa really broadened my views on translation specifically, and on translation in society. The campus in South Africa is heavily multilingual. Not only Afrikaans and English, but many South African languages as well. So it was very enriching for me to see translation just happening there every day, and I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to live there and to live that.
But you always wanted to work in the UK, is that true?
No, I wanted to stay in Europe.
Come on, we'll come back to Spain, mate.
But the Spanish system doesn't make it very easy, and I think that's a point to make for non-European academics. I think because of migration regulations, visa conditions, and all that, our options are very limited. And the UK, although expensive, has a university system, a higher education system that is much more open to people coming from, or at least it used to be in 2016, for people coming from abroad. So at the time, the UK seemed like the best option, or the most likely option for me. And I'm very happy here at the moment. So I'm happy that happened. But no, I just wanted to stay in Europe. That was the goal.
Well, it's almost Europe. We can pretend.
Yeah.
Tell me other things you're doing. Recently, you became part of a journal on the editorial board, right?
Yes. So this year joined Jostrans, the Journal of Specialized Translation, as deputy editor, together with Utsi Beale and Jonathan Evans and Sarah Maitland. And I'm also associate editor of Translation Spaces, that is led by Dorothy Kenny and Joss Morkins.
Right. So you're getting into the politics of the profession. And tell me about the association in the UK and Ireland that you have of institutions, because you've been involved.
Sure.
In this, right?
Yeah, so it's the Association for Programs in Translation and Interpreting in the UK and Ireland, APTIS. It's a translator and interpreter training association. And it was created in 2017. So when I was just coming to the UK, Aston was one of the driving forces behind the association, and it was created in a way to counter possible issues coming after Brexit, because we would be disconnected from the rest of trainers. So it was the idea of creating this space for us to meet and discuss issues of training. We just had our, I think it was the 4th conference in Leeds, and it was really, really nice, because it's really becoming this space of for trainers to come together to discuss what they're doing. And the UK is very interesting in that way, because programs, we have many programs, and they are very linked to the industry and to the global language industries as well. So it's good to see what colleagues are doing. I organized the first, together with other colleagues at Aston in 2018, I organized the first conference, and it was good to see that the trend is continuing, and the association and the conference are really becoming that center for translator and interpreter training in the UK and Ireland.
Okay. I'd like to ask about your research, because the doctoral thesis was on the reception of subtitles, and I think you're still working on reception, which yes. I like very much, because I think the rest of translation studies should do it too, but they're not. How does machine translation and the other technologies feed into that? Are you looking at the reception of MT as well?
Sure. So basically what I do, it's sometimes it looks a bit scattered, but what my research is in the intersection of translation technologies and users in a way, and particularly elements of disruption. So whatever happens in those spaces that changes the way how we engage with translated content. So I do that with subtitles. I did that with non-professional subtitles for American TV series as part of my PhD, and I used eye tracking to study reception. And part of what I'm doing now is still related to that. So I work with colleagues at the University of Warsaw, Macquarie University, and the University of East Anglia on this Polish-funded project on the reception of subtitles. We're trying to isolate how different variables affect the way how people read subtitles, to try to understand the limits that we have when we're creating subtitles. And more recently, I started working with machine translation. And currently, I have a British Academy funded project on the use of machine translation among local authorities, charities, and NGOs in the West Midlands area, so in this area. But I'm also working on the reception of post-edited and raw machine subtitles together with Anna Gerberov and Jos Morkens. We have this study on how users react to raw, post-edited, and human subtitles to see what differences there are. So that's what I'm doing roughly at the moment.
Right. I hasten to add, Anna is another product of Tarragona.
Yes.
We have a secret underground network there. More generally, in translation studies, what sort of things do you think we should be studying or studying more? I'm thinking of young people coming in looking for topics for PhD theses. What suggestions would you have?
Right now, and after my experience with translator training in the UK and in Spain, and what I know of South Africa, I think we need to look more into the intersection of translation technologies and working conditions and how different stakeholders operate.
Working conditions of translators, you mean?
Working conditions of translators, yeah, and other professionals in the language industries in general, so project managers, and all these roles that influence and have a say in the translation process. Because we're seeing that through these processes of automation of workflows, some of these channels of communication and these changes are becoming very difficult, and some of that basically undermines the working conditions of translators. And I think we as scholars have a responsibility to take a look and assess how this implementation of the technologies is happening and how we can contribute to creating those channels of communication between different stakeholders in this process. I think that's going to be very, very essential. In translation studies as such, I think we also need to continue looking at foundational research. I think many of the assumptions that we have in translation studies have not necessarily been tested or are not relevant, or that don't have the same impact right now as they had 20 or 30 years ago. So I think it would be interesting to see this.
For example?
Well, in subtitling, for instance, the idea of how people engage with subtitled content, I think is changing drastically. We have more multilingual products. We have text becoming part of the original product. Recently, there was this TV series launched on Netflix, 1899. It's a multilingual product. They use subtitles as part of the original. And I think this engagement with this new content in a way will change the way how we see subtitles and how used to people are to engaging with subtitled content. Okay. So it's not the same to have a fully foreign program with subtitles as to have something that's original and involves or forces you to read subtitles in order to access the original. I think that's going to change this idea of the source and the target, which is something that we have been discussing, but I think we will need to continue reviewing as well.
Okay, David, your energy is amazing. I follow your career with great interest. Look, thank you very, very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.